In this episode, we are doing something that few have had the opportunity to do since 9/11. We are getting a full tour, and I mean all the way down to the ice-cold bottom of Greers Ferry Dam from the United States Army Corps of Engineers. This tour will take us deep inside Greers Ferry Dam, where we can feel the chill of the deep waters on the other side of the dam walls. Led by Jay Townsend, Chief Public Affairs Officer at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Little Rock District, we will also witness where generation begins, how it fills the Little Red River, and how it affects our country. From start to finish, this video is wild.
Hey, All About Arkansas. Thank you guys for coming with us today. We're going to give you a tour of Greers Ferry Dam. My name is Jay Townsend. I'm the Chief of Public Affairs for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Little Rock District, and we're excited to show you and tell you about what Greers Ferry Dam does, not only for our state, but for our region. So what I want to ensure we cover today is the authorized purposes of Greers Ferry Dam and the rest of the White River dams. And that's flood control, hydropower, water supply, environmental stewardship, and recreation. So the first stop on our tour, we're going to go inside the dam, talk about the dam and our flood control mission. Inside Greers Ferry Dam, just like in the other dam, I think that I was able to show you guys, this one here has been here more than 50 years. So first stop on the tour, I'll show you that we have created this underground cavern. It's been here since 1963, and so we've got stalactites starting to form, and then from the floor up we've got stalagmites. So you get a little bit of seepage over time, calcium buildup, and you get these stalactites and stalagmites.
Are they cold? Because they look cold.
Yeah, they're cold.
Yeah.
But we clean it up, right? We're not going to let them get really big. It's not a natural cave, but it's just a natural occurrence that's happening inside of here. But you can see it's a lot of concrete. And it's 856,000 cubic yards of concrete in total to make Greers Ferry Dam. And you can feel the immediate temperature drop. This is the place to be on a 100-degree Arkansas summer day. So the engineers that built these dams were just brilliant, just geniuses. And so they knew that we were going to have to maintain them and watch them over the years, and so they installed tilt meters and seismology equipment so that we would know if the dam had shifted or moved. And one of the things they did to be able to tell is they put piano strings all the way at the top of the dam and ran them down through, hooked them up to these instruments, and we can tell if there's been any shift or movement in these dams. With the proximity that we have to the New Madrid fault line over by the Mississippi, it's important to do that. And so we've got these in all of our high head dams at Beaver, Table Rock, Bull Shoals, Norfolk, Greers, and the rest.
So it runs from essentially the road height straight down, and you can see any variation or movement.
Yeah, you can see here, the engineers look at the X and Y axis. So for all you gamers out there, you're messing with the X and Y axis, left and right, and ups and downs.
You can see the wire.
And you can see the wire, it's right there.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
That's interesting that they would think to do that.
Because you'd never, something this large, you'd never notice except for something like that. You would never perceive any kind of shift.
So they knew we were going to need to be able to monitor and watch for movement, as well as you can use surveying as well too to look at a dam and see if it's moved or shifted. But
this is probably like centimeter movement is going to register.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly down
something very small.
To the actual detail, but I know that they can watch for that and they can monitor for that.
Oh, I just saw the 9 change, like a fraction. Yeah, 8 and 9 changes a fraction, 7 to 9 there. That's cool.
It's probably, maybe somebody drives across it, or an 18-wheeler, or
the 9 can change. There's a change here, and that's been going to 7, and that's going from 4.
I would imagine it wiggles some
yeah,
traffic.
And that's probably a tiny measurement, is what I'm saying.
Very tiny, yeah.
Probably, semi going over, maybe give you several numbers.
Absolutely. Us and our camper.
Yeah, we pulled over here in the camper many times.
But we want you to see down here, right? There's nothing in here except for the things that we need to maintain and operate the dam. You get a lot of questions about what's in there. What are you hiding? We're not hiding anything. TV and movies will lead you to believe, just like the last dam we went through, Arthur V. Orman, that there's aliens or treasures or things down here. Secrets, but it's a lot of concrete. This is identified locations or monoliths inside the dam, and so the engineers can number everything and they can report back when they draw up plans or reports and say monolith 18, monolith 19 is something that needs looked at. Yep.
And a monolith is?
The support, right?
Yeah, just giant support, concrete support that's holding the dam together.
Okay. Stalactites.
Well, this is water.
Yeah, this is more like
Forming?
water and condensation.
Okay.
But seepage is normal. It relieves some pressure on the dam. It's all allowed to drain down here, and then we pump it out from the galleys. So we've just walked into a portion of the dam where you can see a smaller penstock. And a penstock is like a giant straw or tube that allows water to come in from Greers Ferry Lake. And so this tube comes through the dam and then begins to get smaller right before it starts to turn and curve, generating velocity using the force of the reservoir behind it, plus we're squeezing that pressure in, and it shoots water into the turbine. And it starts spinning that turbine, which turns a shaft, which turns the rotator, and then generates electricity using reverse polarization and sends power out to a 7-state region. So that's how hydropower is made. Here on a smaller scale, we make just enough hydropower to run our facilities at the visitor center, at the project office, and here at Greers Ferry Dam. So if the power goes out, we can still maintain operations here at Greers Ferry.
And this one piece here is what runs those buildings you just mentioned?
Yeah, that's right. It's powering all the electricity needed. It just doesn't make sense to use a fuel-powered generator to give power to a power plant. So the engineers were smart enough to put in these house units, smaller, and we'll see the difference in size and scale. A full-size penstock is bigger than me and you combined, taller-wise, you know. So we'll see the big ones in a minute. Here's something else too. The engineers were smart. This came from the Willamette Valley in northwest United States. You know, we built a lot of dams. So did Bureau of Land Management. So did Tennessee Valley Authority. Sorry, but we all work together to maintain this equipment, provide parts and stuff that we need to keep this infrastructure working.
So this, like the larger generators, I'm assuming runs sometimes and it isn't running other times, it's brought on and offline?
Yep, on and off as needed.
Is it louder when it's running? Like, can you tell if you're hearing anything?
It's a hum,
okay.
And if it's making any more noise than that, then something would be wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's in solid concrete like this right here. There's not much room for movement, and when that tube has water in it, it's completely full. So it's just if you're hearing noises, it may be because there's air pockets or something else in there, and you'd have to throttle it down. What you're hearing, right, is coming from up above us. The engineers that built these structures were also smart enough to say, hey, we're going to need shafts all throughout these dams to be able to move equipment in and out. And so that's what you've got right here. So you're hearing road noise because the road's straight up above you.
Is that about the height of the road that we're seeing, you think? Or is that more like the tower? I don't know if we're looking at like daylight or what that is.
I don't think that's the tower. Go all the way down before we go out. Okay. That way you can say you went all the way through Greers Ferry Dam. So we have storage tanks like this all around. I think I told you guys this the last time. You know, we had a storage tank like this out there at Arthur V. Orman. But this should be painted like a minion. Every one of these should look like a minion. That's a minion, right?
Oh, that would be
What's the one minion with the one eye? What's his name? It's all in jest. I'm joking, but that just looks like a minion to me. And we got them at each one of our structures. It would just be a bright spot on the tour.
Yeah, I said we have snow groups. So I think people start seeing the spillway and think power, but if I'm right, the spillway is not power, right? When power generating, that's not something you see with your eyes outside. That's happening internally.
That's right.
Whereas the spillway is just extra water that we don't even need for power coming out of the lake.
That's right. The spillway, we try not to use it unless we really need to or we have to. We prefer to push the water, the excess water, through the hydropower plant, because then it's giving us a benefit, yeah. But if this is moving the gates, which I don't know if it is, but if you watch and it goes up, then you've opened your gate 1 foot. If you watch and it goes up, then you've opened your gates 2 feet. And engineers know how much water is going through depending on how high the reservoir is and how high each gate is open. So sometimes when we have to make spillway releases, we'll say we've got gates 1, 3, 5, and 7 open 1 foot each, equaling 3,200 cubic feet per second, which is the equivalent of a generator or something like that. So they know, how much water is coming out with each increment that you open one of those spillway gates.
And we've been on the overlook and seen all of them open before, just rushing white. So at that point, there's more water. They've made all the energy they can make out of the water, and there's still too much water. So then they're just letting off the top of the lake.
So let's talk about flood control, because that's going to answer that question for you. So we want these dams to be at conservation pool as soon as possible. So let's just say, like in the last few days, we got a lot of rain. So we got water that's above our conservation pool. So if you look at our lake level pages, you're going to see what's called top of conservation pool. And that's the target. That's where we want our water. Anything above that is flood storage, and anything below that has been bought and paid for by somebody like Southwestern Power Administration, a water supply agreement user for drinking water. And then in some of our reservoirs, you've got allocated storage for trout down below Bull Shoals and Northport. All the water in the conservation pool is already bought and purchased. So anytime you've got water above that, you want to release it. But you can't release it unless you've got channel capacity downstream. Meaning that if we've had a flood or an event like that, that you've got channel capacity downstream. So you look downstream at like Newport and Georgetown, and they've got gauges that are 12, 14, 21 feet. And depending on the time of year, if the river's already exceeding 12, 14, or 21 feet, then you hold. That's why sometimes we hold flood waters for a very long time. But if seasonally we can be at 14 feet and that river's only at 12, then we know we can bring the river up 2 feet with the flood storage that we have and get rid of it. The goal is to get rid of flood storage as fast as possible. Most of the time you want to do it with hydropower, but if you've got additional channel capacity and you can use the spillways, we can get back down to conservation pool faster.
Okay, so as long as the downstream area can handle it, then you're getting rid of it.
We're here to prevent flooding, not create flooding.
Yeah.
And so if you're already in a flooded situation, then you'll see the Corps of Engineers holding. Now, there are minimum flood releases that need to be made sometimes, just to get a little bit of water out. Oftentimes you can, from this side, oftentimes you can do that through the hydropower units, and you hardly notice it downstream because you're just matching flows. So the way flood control works is that you have, especially here in Arkansas, you have heavy repeated rains in the spring that don't give you a lot of time in between to evacuate because the downstream channel conditions don't allow it. So you hold, and you hold, and you hold, and the dams are big enough that most years you can capture all the spring water and not have to start releasing it until closer to summertime. Every now and then you'll be in spring, and let's just say you get a tropical storm barrel or something like that that comes up, and if your reservoirs are already full and they've reached capacity, and you just got to start letting some water go. But even then, it's controlled. It's not just uncontrolled flows. As soon as you can shut the gates and stop it.
But let the downstream catch up.
That's right. And so in the White River Basin, you've got Beaver, Table Rock, Bull Shoals, North Fork, and Greers Ferry. Also in that White River Basin, you've got the Buffalo River, and you've got the lower Black River and the lower White River, the Strawberry, 11 Point, and the Current, that all contribute and all come down to a convergence there on the White. And so that's why we're looking at gauges at Newport and at Georgetown, because they're further on down that have collected water from all those tributaries. And so if you get a lot of rain on the Buffalo but not on the White, but we still need to release, we can't until that storage from the Buffalo's gone out, and we've got channel capacity downstream. So the White River Basin as a whole is only 48% controlled. So that means 52% of it's uncontrolled runoff. So when it rains,
because the Black comes in there in Newport too.
That's right. Yep, it all comes down through there. So when it rains, only 48% of it's under the control of these dams.
I got you.
And if you have a storm like that came through the other day and put 15 inches of rain, you know, as it was coming through the Buffalo and as it was coming through Crooked Creek and some of those other areas, we've got to let all that water go through the system before we can release. Luckily, even though we had that much rain, we were approaching some drought levels. And so the ground was thirsty, the trees were thirsty, they soaked up a lot of it,
So less got to the river.
and the creeks and the streams were also very parched and empty, and so we had a lot of water. I mean, if that would have been a rain that we received in February or March, we'd have been in a flood, a really bad, a larger flood situation versus the flash flooding situations that we saw.
Or if another one like that followed this one, when everything's saturated, it'd be a lot worse.
That's right. And that's how you get yourself into long-term floods, is when you have heavy repeated rains every 2 or 3 days without enough time in between to evacuate storage. That's how your reservoir fills up and stays full. And they're built big enough that we can typically capture all the rain we're going to get for the spring, and then it starts coming back down as you slowly start to release it when you get channel capacity and throughout the summer. Generating power for the most part the entire time. When we get into the hydropower plant, we'll go over this again, but what's amazing is that a drop of water can fall in the White River Basin above Beaver and can be generated into power. Then it flows, actually it flows north, which is kind of an anomaly, into Missouri, where it can be generated as power at Table Rock. Then it goes through the power company dam there on Taneycomo, so it's generated into power a third time, then down to Bull Shoals, generated in power, and then on out. And so there's several places where a drop of water can be turned into power multiple times. You guys saw that on the Arkansas River as we talked about it on that trip too. So hydropower is a big deal, and we'll give you the numbers on what that provides to the nation inside the power plant.
We touched on this a little bit when we talked to you last time about what happens, and someone had asked me to ask you if it gets a crack in the dam. And we've seen the movies where it's a big, everybody down at JFK Park gets washed away, right? So truthfully though, how much stress can it withstand? It's not just going to crack open someday, right?
So this is a lot of concrete, and Hollywood does not give our engineers the credit when they design these things. In Hollywood, you see a dam just goes. But if you ever drive over Greers Ferry, it's huge, it's massive, it's over-engineered, and this is good, strong concrete. We don't believe that you would ever see Greers Ferry Dam or one of our dams go like that in a movie and then everybody's gone. We believe what would happen is that we had already been in a flood fight for a very, very long time. And then let's just say the lake's full and we've got to get some water out, but all of a sudden some of our tainer gates, the big gates on the spillway, don't work. And so now we've lost the ability to relieve some pressure on the dam. So it's filling up faster than we're able to release. And so what we have to do is we have to make sure those gates work at all times. Because once you lose the ability to be able to release water through the hydropower plant, the gates, the tainer gates that are up top, and then sluice gates is another way. They're also called conduits that we can let water out. Once you lose that ability, then you've lost some ability to get water out if you had to in an emergency. So then let's just say what that happens. You know, you got to play the what if game.
Everything failed at the same time.
Yeah, you know, what is the movie where all calamity happens? Everything breaks, and we can't get the water out. The lake would fill up, water would flow over the spillway, but then what would happen probably first is you would see it start to go around the abutments where it ties into on each side of the mountain here. And then if you had water flowing over that, it might start to go around it, and then you could lose one of the walls and you would start to see that failure happening.
So probably a corner on one side might flow over there, but that would be probably the worst of it. Yeah.
That's right. And you know, if you get enough scouring in there and you lost a big portion of it, then you could have large amounts of water. But you know, in modern day, we've been fighting that flood for a long time. We've been warning people, you know, we start to lose control of the dam because things break, we're going to put out information to local emergency managers, and they're going to give information to their people. It's their communities, they know how to help them the most, but we're going to give them the best information we can so that they can make informed decisions for their people. But we're going to have time before we get there.
A lot of pre-warning. It wouldn't be suddenly one day.
I mean, for us to be in a situation like that, we would have been in a fight for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, we just went through that main galley area, and you might think that's it, but the engineers, like I said, over-engineered this, and you can see we can go even further down to the very bottom of the dam, or we could also go up to the very top of the dam through these walkways here, and we'll go all the way down so you guys can see.
You're gonna need a hand. Don't fall behind the fence. Slippery.
That's a cold handrail. Your viewers won't know how cold this handrail is. It's uncomfortably cold. Having an ice cube.
Yes, exactly. It feels like ice.
And you're thinking, why didn't Jay ask us to bring mittens and a scarf down here?
Yeah, definitely thought that was the deepest level.
And so you know, the engineers need this to be able to monitor the dam, physically inspect it, and know what's going on at all times.
This feels terrifying. I'm trying to picture where we are.
So
I don't think I want to know.
yeah, you're way well underneath the lake now. I've come down here in our dams and turned off the lights. And then I've taken the shutter on a camera and opened it for 60 seconds, and there's not an ounce of light down here.
Even no matter how long it's open, you can't find it.
It's dark.
Yeah.
It's dark. If the power went out right now, the light on your camera rig and our cell phones is all we got. But it is dark. And like you said, it feels, you know, the room feels dark.
So the water running down is just coming through the wall slowly, or where's it coming from?
Just normal seepage coming through.
the concrete?
Yep, and it comes down here and then it's pumped out.
Okay.
Yep. You want some of the pressure burning off, being relieved naturally, and that's how this does. And then these are kind of like reliefs, you know, if water were to fill up enough.
So we're near the bottom of the lake, you would say, probably?
Yeah, you're very close to the bottom of the dam now. You can see all the water runs down into here, and then it's pumped out from here.
Wow. This is constant. So I guess the concrete's just super saturated. Eventually, some just finds its way in.
And then it's just the amount of sweating that's going on that's leading to it.
They knew there'd be this much volume, so they built it with that in mind to have channels to get it out.
That's right.
It's all that's coming through the concrete, eventually and seeping into here, and then it goes down to here and gets pumped out so it doesn't flood. Yeah.
And sweat.
Yeah, this is condensation, yeah.
If I move this up and it starts floating, it lets our engineers know, hey, you got more water down here than you need. Yeah.
Like a toilet.
Like a toilet. Just like a toilet bulb. Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna go up.
Power is generated inside here, comes out, and then this is how you start to you begin to transfer it to the switch yard. And that's what that hum is. All right. We'll walk out here and we'll get the view that nobody else gets.
All right.
I like how you can see it all from this wing wall right here, and this is where I'll explain to you a lot of what we just did and then what we're about to see. But we're walking out here on this wing wall. To my left over here is the spillway and how we use the spillway for flood control. And then to my right over here is the downstream area of the powerhouse. And so you would see this water right here would be very turbulent if we were actually generating right now, which we're not. Southwestern Power has us forecasted to generate here later this afternoon. So you can see trout right there, some right there. We've had a long, hot summer, and it's been hard on the fish because we've been into our conservation pool. And so it's taken a lot of efforts between the Corps of Engineers, the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, and Southwestern Power to ensure there's cool water down there. We've also run into challenges. People are fishing downriver from Pangburn. That's a long way. It's more than 20 miles, and we don't guarantee that cold water down there. And so they're fishing from Dewey. So from Pangburn to Dewey, they're fishing in that area when it's really hot, and that's really tough on those fish. And so we really don't encourage that. We'd rather them fish closer to the dam, and you'll have less of a mortality rate on some of these trout when you catch them. But if you catch them in that really hot water and you just fought them for several minutes, so it's going to be really hard to revive them.
They're more stressed and they're warmer, whereas they can handle the stress when they're in the cooler water.
Correct. Yeah, it really is. And the clouds today, goodness gracious.
Perfect.
So Greers Ferry Dam, you know, we all love it for the reservoir that it created and the trout fishery that's downstream of it, but it is an economic powerhouse for our nation. So let me just give you some stats here. As far as flood risk management goes, it's prevented over $460 million in flood damages in 2022, and since it was built, $524.5 million worth of downstream damages have been prevented. Inside, you've got two 48 megawatt units, so you've got an 88 megawatt power plant, and it created 280,000 megawatt hours in 2021, returning $8 to $10 million to the U.S. Treasury. And that's unique because you've got hydropower. So let's just say, let's lump together all the supplemental powers. The normal power you got nuclear, coal fire, and that sort of thing. The supplemental power you have is hydropower, and you got solar power, and then you've got wind power. Well, our country has to pay to keep wind and solar going, but hydropower puts money back into the Treasury. So this is a very unique resource for our nation. And like I said, it's there to meet the nation's peak demands. And when it does that, it prevents rolling blackouts and brownouts. And so where were you guys February 16th, 2021? You were snowed into your house.
Yes, we were.
Because it was the snowpocalypse. And it was 8 degrees outside. And I had 24 inches of snow in my yard in Arkansas, and that's just unheard of. Yeah. And so everybody's heaters was down, and it was running, was cranked up, and they were running all day long. They weren't stopping. Our houses down here just aren't built for that kind of cold. So there was a huge demand for power at that time, and you saw Texas losing power everywhere. Their infrastructure wasn't built for that sort of cold. So what they did is Southwestern Power called us and said, hey, you got to turn it on, you got to leave it on. So normally we're peaking power plants where we just meet peak demands to prevent rolling blackouts, but in those times of emergency, just like that extreme heat we had earlier in May and June, we were running our units a lot more to be able to meet that peak demand to prevent those rolling blackouts and brownouts. So it works the same in the wintertime just as it does in the summertime. But if we didn't have it, then we've got a real problem. And this thing's tied into a 7-state system, so when it starts generating power later today, that power could be going to Kansas or Texas or Oklahoma. Okay. And so it's regional, it's not just statewide.
During that snow, we did our part. We kept our thermostat on 62 to try to help the
I did too.
Load.
My power went out one time, and I was looking at all the units, and they're running. Something else happened, and it went out. But all of the dams were on, and they were running 24/7 to create that power. Also, behind the reservoir there, you've got Greers Ferry Lake that's got 4 public, let's just call them drinking water straws. So 4 companies have a drinking water straw in there that pump water out. And so they serve about 588,000 users. So that means 1 out of every 5 Arkansans gets their drinking water from Greers Ferry. And so one of the most important things we do here is environmental stewardship. And we keep that reservoir as clean as we can, Now, you don't want to go up there and take a drink right now. You do want it to be treated, but it receives very little treatment from the time it leaves the reservoir, goes through one of those drinking straws, until it gets to your tap. It's basically a lot of charcoal and sand, because the cleaner the reservoir is, the less treatment it has to be. If the reservoir is dirty and they've got to treat a lot of that water, then it adds a different taste to it and it costs more money. So drinking water is cheaper because of that. In most of our municipalities, we're providing low-cost electricity and drinking water to Arkansans in a 7-state region with Greers Ferry Dam, Beaver Dam, Table Rock, Bull Shoals, and North Fork.
I know from a smell and taste perspective, we've been in other lakes. When you're in this one swimming and that water touches your lips or you smell it, it smells like spring water to me, like just in its natural form. Other lakes you can smell like some weird odors, but this one has an amazing, just the cleanness of it when you're in it. It's incredible.
Yeah,
you
these.
expect it to be fishy.
Yeah, it's not. It smells and tastes like
We've
bottled
taken
water.
a bowl for 2 by accident.
Yeah,
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
On its own.
But these Ozark Mountain reservoirs that were created by our nation 50, 60 years ago are just national treasures. And, you know, they're all part of our national security strategy too. We need these things online to provide power for people. If power goes out for a long period of time, it's really stressful. The power that goes from here is first sold off to municipalities that are keeping things like hospitals and our nation's critical infrastructure energized. And so just very important to have. And then behind that, we've got over 1,000 campsites and recreation areas for American people to go to. And some people are like, why is that so important to the Army Corps of Engineers? Well, healthy America is better than an unhealthy America. We need Americans outside, trout fishing, camping, getting away from...
Oh, there we go.
So, it's over here. What that says is you're going to have a change in releases. And we're not releasing anything right now, so now we're going to.
Oh, so that's what we hear when we're camping.
Yeah,
That's
it's
right,
telling you that
that's
you're going
right.
to get out of the water.
Here's the difference between wind, solar, nuclear, and coal fire. Here's what sets hydropower apart from the rest. This is why hydropower is so important. It's the only form of power we've got that we can bring online instantly. So all of a sudden, let's just say one of those other plants goes offline and they don't want rolling blackouts and brownouts to happen. They can call and say, Corps of Engineers, fire up a unit, fire up a generator. We need it. We can come online in a matter of minutes. Normally they'll blow that horn, give it some time for downstream fishermen to make it to higher water, and then begin releasing.
The water's there waiting at all times to turn into energy.
And that's why I said earlier, we look at that water as that water is power. That is, of course, drinking water. That's environmental stewardship. That's recreation. So it's more than just a playpen for pontoon boats and, you know, big bass boats. It's great for that. It's great for crappie fishing, but it does a lot more.
This river is about to get maybe, I don't know, 5 to 10 feet deeper depending on where you are, I guess.
There you go.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Look at the wave. So it comes out below this big bend.
And I can tell you from looking at it, both units came online.
Okay, so there's only 2 altogether, right?
Yep. If you look down there, you can really see it.
Oh yeah.
Because it's going down.
Over here, babe. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Moving. That's cool.
See those fishermen on the corner right there? They heard the horn and they didn't walk up. And that's just a big mistake in our opinion, right? You hear the horn and you need to respect it and move.
Yeah. So basically with 1 and 2, is it one side and the other? Essentially you can tell more flow on one side if it was only one.
You were talking about my job. I just have to say I have the best job there is, I believe. And You know, you could ask anyone from the Corps too. Most of us feel the same way. We're Arkansans. We live here and we benefit from this stuff too. And I can sink my teeth into what we do every single day, providing these resources to Arkansans and to the nation. So it's easy to wake up and go to work when you're doing this sort of stuff. Smart doctors will tell you that a 10 to 20 minute walk outside every day does just as much as depression meds. And you can record me saying that because I'm raising future Americans, and I just see the health benefits from them being outside, moving, being active, and swimming and doing those sorts of things.
I think that water and sunlight, vitamin D production you get, and the fresh air has a big part to do with it. And we have 5 acres of woods where we live, and I know like in Japan they have some fancy word for tree therapy, where they basically walk through the trees, and for mental health and for physical health. And sure enough, like in Arkansas, we can do that all the time.
Even Einstein went for walks all the time to work things out, to solve things, to forget things. Well, for the sake of time, it's 3. We'll go through here fairly quickly. I got to get Aspen and I back to Little Rock. But
so 1 and 2, right? These are 1 and 2?
1 and 2, they are on, and they are generating power. You can stand up here. This is not, that's Pelton, not Peloton. Look here, you can plug right into it.
Oh, wow. You can charge your battery right here.
So you can see the nameplate. This is for the exciter. Tells you how many RPMs, amps.
Wow, I can feel it vibrating.
Yeah. And the lights come on when we're generating. And then we've got a big giant gantry crane that allows us to disassemble these units and take them apart.
Take certain parts off.
Yep. So you can see here. The info I sent you is that we've got 2 48 megawatt units. The nameplate from the manufacturer is not wrong though, I promise. So you can also see too, we've got rail tracks. We can move stuff in and out.
These go down, they go down this far, is the bottom of it here?
Oh no.
Oh, there's more down there?
Yeah. If you remember, I told you that water comes down through a giant penstock, a giant straw, and then it starts to curve around and water's injected into a turbine that turns really fast, that then turns a shaft, that then turns the rotor at the top. This is that shaft. That vertical shaft turning was really cool. Come check this out. Remember when I told you that the penstocks for these units were much bigger than the house unit? That smaller penstock we saw compared to this.
So this is where water's being funneled into a tight place?
Yeah. This is like I said, lakeside is pushing water into here, and in there is when it begins that spin down, generating velocity. And now we're...
That's water pressure, right?
That's it.
Oh, that sounds terrible. That sounds very scary.
Yeah. I promise that's water moving through the turbine.
Sounds like it's going to bust out.
It's very safe. The noise just though in there is not the Kraken or the demons or anything else.
From here into this?
That's right.
Wow.
It's much bigger than most people think. See the small one? The house unit. So you got these main units supplying water that generates power for a 7-state region, and then you've got the smaller penstock for the house unit.
I think that the lake, right, is basically calm. It's just water sitting there, doing nothing. And then once you funnel it down to get that pressure, the sound coming out of that, the violence of that water, the energy it's producing is amazing. It's not like it's capturing a river. I mean, it is in one way, but that lake is just sitting there, looks totally calm on top, no pressure.
You'll never get the image, but Lindsay's face will look pretty worried when we walked into that room. So this is the house unit. It's a much smaller version of the big units, but you see the penstock coming in from the wall there, and then you see that tube starts to get smaller and twist around, shooting water into that turbine, which turns that shaft and then generates the electricity up here where they're reversing magnets.
The turbine is here?
Yeah. Yeah, inside there, turbine, the water's turning the turbine, which is turning the shaft, which is turning the stator, generating electricity. Just looking at it, it's strange because you just saw the full-size one, you know, but you can see all the components on the smaller house unit.
Yeah, we were walking around up there, a lot easier to understand when you see it all together.
So over here you have some dam tools. These are the tools for the house unit. In a minute we'll show you the tools for the main units. Everything's just bigger down here. It's like we're in Texas. No, so then you got your big dam tools, much bigger than the small house unit tools. But see over here, all of these. Just for scale. But everything in here, a lot of times you either have to fabricate it or repair it. You can't go to your local hardware store and get this stuff. And so it's either got to be specially made or fabricated on site. That's why you see a lot of these tools and all this equipment. You know, you've got a 50-year-old hydropower plant. You've got to be able to work on it and take care of it. Specially trained people go through long processes to be able to work here. It's just, you know, the things that most people don't realize. You go to the lake, you're there to enjoy it, but at the same time, it's reducing floods, generating hydropower, providing drinking water, environmental stewardship, and then recreation to Americans who desperately need it. So we're just very proud to be able to do what we do. The people that work at the Corps of Engineers are Arkansans and Southern Missourians too. We're your Sunday school teachers and your softball coaches. So if you see someone that works for the Corps, don't give them a fistful and say we want more water for our fish or we want more water upriver. Say thank you. Like, it's a thankless job. And so if somebody's walked up to someone wearing a Corps of Engineers shirt and said thank you, that would probably change their day.
Solving a lot of problems, that's for sure.
Our nation is just so fortunate to have a Corps of Engineers. George Washington appointed the first Army engineer officers in 1775 during the Revolutionary War to start providing engineering solutions for our fortified fighting positions. When the nation said, hey, we can't figure out how to complete the Panama Canal, they called the Corps of Engineers. When they said, we want to put a man on the moon, they called the Corps of Engineers and we built the Kennedy Space Station. When they said, oh my goodness, we've just had the first pandemic we've had in 100 years, we need alternative solutions for our overrun hospital problems, the Corps of Engineers built alternative care facilities. Every time the nation has a problem that's a challenge or a tough solution, they call the Corps of Engineers. So we provide those solutions to the nation's toughest challenges. That's what the Corps of Engineers is meant to be here for, the United States. So you've got the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers that is shaping the civil works landscape of the United States, and then you've got the military engineers that work in the Army that shape the battle space. Prior to 9/11, when we were able to give dam tours to the public more frequently, we would start here. This was the old entrance/visitor center. You can see the great murals, the one at Greers here. But because this is vital to our nation's security, they've looked at critical infrastructure across the United States and said, hey, these are some things we've got to think about keeping safer. But slowly by slowly, we bring people down here and remind them what it's all here for.
If you liked this video, be sure to join me on Patreon for all the behind-the-scenes content and my exclusive Arkansas travel guides. Give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you around the natural state.